Welcome. In this episode, I have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Lisbeth Roy. Dr. Roy and I have known one another for many years. We've worked together for many years. In this conversation, we discuss her origin story, where it all began for her, the adversity she overcame along the way, how she leveraged personal life experiences to fuel her career, and what she learned in her career and professional world to support her personal and family life. The balance between both of those dimensions was done very well in this conversation. I found it inspiring. She is a force of nature. Now, there's much more I could say about her background. She is the founder of Doctor's Studio, a functional integrative medicine practice in Boca Raton, Florida. She is the chief strategy officer for Forum Health. Dr. Roy's background is broad and diverse. This is one you do not want to miss. It is filled with insight and inspiration. So, without further ado, I give you Dr. Lisbeth Roy. And we're live. Hey, Dr. Roy.
Hey, Logan, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Right before we hit record, we were discussing how this is much anticipated, but perhaps long overdue.
Yeah, I would say so. Who knew others might be interested in your story?
Well, having worked with you for many years now and had the privilege of hearing parts and pieces of your origin story along the way, I can say I think a lot of people will feel inspired by your story, the lessons that you learned along the way, the perspective you have as a business leader. And I'm excited to get into it.
All right. Well, thank you.
So, when you look at your career from the stratospheric overview, 30,000 feet up, from where you are now, if you look back to where it began, how would you start that story?
Ah, that's a great question. Well, I guess I would start that story as from the point where I wanted to be a veterinarian. I actually lived in New Hampshire. Had a young son and was going to college at Colby Sawyer College in New London. I had a second grader, and I was a freshman, or actually a sophomore in college there. And his elementary school was right across the street. So we kind of went to school together. And I decided I want to be a veterinarian. And when I thought about why, it was because I wanted to be important and necessary for my community. And to be a large animal veterinarian in a rural New Hampshire community would have been, purposeful. So I really set my sights on that. And even as a young girl, I enjoyed animals, and I thought that veterinarian school would, to be a veterinarian might be my thing. So I was in college, decided that I would set my sights on that. And as I started human anatomy and physiology, I realized that, there was a lot actually uh, with human medicine that interests me. And it was at that time that I actually thought that that might be possible for me to go to medical school.
What did the transition look like from there when you started going through the human anatomy classes and the idea started coming to your mind? I mean, going from the contemplation stage to the action stage of switching your academic focus, how did that look?
Um, yeah, it was really pretty simple, and that is that I just decided that I would investigate further what was required. Start to focus my coursework on that, and just assumed that I would be headed into veterinary school. And then with the anatomy and the physiology, as I mentioned, it became really obvious to me that there was a lot that was interesting about humans. And so I worked for Dartmouth Medical Center at the Dartmouth Medical School, actually, in clinical trials. And so I was involved in some medicine. I could see what that was all about, which was very interesting. So I really learned the business of medicine before I went to medical school. From college, from Colby Sawyer College, I started to work for a large group called Hallmark Health. They were just north of Boston. They owned 4 hospitals within a 5-mile radius. And so I worked in their administrative office. So I actually learned the business of medicine first. Yeah.
There's a thread to the story that you started with that I want to ensure it comes along for the journey. You think as a layman, you hear medical school, and I think anyone knows it incredibly demanding
Mm.
for super intelligent, high performing people. At that, it's a very demanding process to go through, stacking the business education that you got, the medical business experience must have been an additional segment of learning and challenge. But the thread I'm pointing at, Beth, is your son. Not only were you going through this really demanding medical training and getting direct experience to the medical business world, you also were raising a young child.
Yeah, no, that's true. When I started in medical school, my first year of medical school, Liam was 13 years old. Yeah. So I had a teenage son. And, he was very active. So all through college, he played hockey and, um, you know, participated in all kinds of different activities. So we had supporting the family, raising him, going to school, all of that, all at the same time. It was quite demanding, quite demanding. And then starting medical school. Thank goodness I didn't have to work. So I went to medical school. That was my full time job. And then taking care of Liam was a big part of it as well. And he became ill my first year of medical school. So he had some seizures prior to that. And then my first year of medical school was when things really took a turn, and he became quite ill. Yeah, so it was very challenging. Meaningful. I certainly had context for what someone might be going through, right? You take a perfectly healthy teenager and all of a sudden becomes very ill, and, a real mystery as to what happened, having seizures, neurologically declining, all kinds of things changing. And you're in medical school and you're studying all of these things. Usually you come home and you check your kids' reflexes, or, you look in their throat or up their nose or in their ears, things like that. And you find normal. That's usually what most medical students would experience. I came home and I wasn't finding normal. And so it was very, very crazy time. A lot of medical students would become hypochondriac, right? So you study something and you say, oh, I must have that. I think I have that. I think I have AFib, whatever. And so I certainly didn't go through that. But, I'm studying neuroanatomy and I'm seeing my son exhibit all the signs of a very significant neurodegenerative process going on. And I come to school and I say, Professor, I can't remember his name at the moment, but this is happening with my son. And he thinks I'm crazy, but it's actually happening with my son, right? I'm seeing this whole thing evolve. So very, very crazy times.
The cliche is that pressure makes diamonds. And in hindsight, perhaps it's easier to say that. But Beth, going through a time like that is unimaginably challenging for someone who didn't go through it. From the outside looking in, it's boggles the mind to imagine how you were able to balance and persevere and make it through with with those pressures and heartbreak. How did you do that? How did you keep your head on track and push through?
Yeah, uh, discipline. That's really what it was. It was a discipline. It was I had to compartmentalize because If I didn't, I wouldn't be good for anything, right? If I'm with him and I'm thinking about school and all the things I have to do, that's not effective. If I'm at school and I'm thinking about him and all the things that, I need to do or the way I want to support him, that's not effective. So it was very much about compartmentalizing and discipline. And I really do think that, pressure makes diamonds. And it was that discipline, that focus. I'll give you an example. So I drove an hour and a half every single morning from home to the hospital where I was doing my training as a third and fourth year medical student and as a medical intern. And I would leave my house at 5:30 in the or actually 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 at the latest, to get to the hospital and be in the lecture hall for grand rounds at 7 a.m. All right. So I'd have to get what my son needed ready for the day, get what I needed ready for the day. My father would come over, and as I would leave the house, he would hang out in the morning, wait for my son to have to get up, get him, in the shower and ready for the day, and then my mother would come over and take him to school. I had his lunch ready. She'd take him to school. And then my mother would pick him up at the end of the day, bring him to their house, feed him dinner. And then either my father would bring him over to my house and put him to bed because I wasn't home yet from the hospital, or I'd get home from the hospital and I would go pick him up. So that was the day, and that there was the time in between, which is when I was in the hospital trying to learn how to be a doctor, right? So, seeing patients and having to really get it. And so, what most medical students and residents did was they went to the doctor's lounge at first thing in the morning. They got themselves a big, huge Starbucks. They went to the cafeteria. They got themselves a big cinnamon bun, this big, thick cinnamon bun, and this big Starbucks. I never did, ever, but every one of them would. And they'd be comatose by the time it was time for ground rounds at 7 a.m., right? Because they would have had their Starbucks with all this sugar crap in it and their big cinnamon bun. Well, I would have been fresh out of the car listening to board study tapes and listening to cases and actively learning, right? I get to the hospital, I'm on. And it was uncanny, unplanned, but uncanny. Maybe not every time, frequently in grand rounds, the lecture would be about something I just listened to for an hour and a half.
Nice.
I'd be like answering questions. It's like, how do you know that? Well, if you were in my car with me for the last hour and a half, you'd know it too, right? It's crazy. So very interesting how, you become a learner who doesn't have time to do it later, right? All my other medical students and residents that were comatose from their Starbucks and cinnamon bun, they would be like, oh, I'll look it up later. I'll look it up later. But there was no later for me. There was only now. So I would look it up right now. I'd understand it, what it was. I'd ask my questions. Because when I got home, I had to be with my son, right? I had to be his mother, had to take care of him and his school and everything else. And so, yeah, you had to be fully present to whatever it was you were doing. And I'm like that with my patients also, just fully present to whatever is going on in that moment. And it's powerful. So I would say that it's the most valuable lessons that I take into my life are from my time with my son.
The discipline and the presence, being present,
Being present,
maintaining daily discipline,
the discipline to be present
the discipline to
with
be present.
whatever you're doing in that moment and not allow yourself to, you know, think about the other things that you have to do. To be really fully present in that moment, it's much more productive and much more meaningful. And yeah, so it serves a purpose. It's challenging in practice. I
Thank you for
probably
sharing.
I should probably go through another boot camp. Actually, I'm thinking about all the ways that I'm distracted throughout the day. I think, wow, I used to be really focused. I probably should start doing what I used to do again. Actually,
That reminds me of land navigation when you're learning to walk through the woods with a compass and a map. You shoot an azimuth the old-fashioned way. You measure the degrees and you shoot an azimuth. You walk for a while. You recalculate, shoot another azimuth, and similar to a practice like being present, you got to recalibrate and shoot a fresh trajectory from where you're at.
On a regular basis. That's right.
Thank you for sharing that chapter of your life. How did that season change once going through the third and fourth year residency, learning to become a doctor, balancing being a mother for your son during that time? How did that season change and unfold into the next season that came after?
Um, well, after medical school, we moved to Tampa, and his father had been living with us, taking care of him in his every day for the last year or so. And I started my practice. I called it the Anti-Aging and Aesthetic Institute. It was called A3. And I learned what functional and regenerative medicine really is through that process while I continued to take care of my son and continued to watch him, live out the rest of his life. It really made a difference in the way that I partnered with my patients, and I believe that it's through that partnership, through that relationship, that's really been the reason why my practice continues to grow. Is really understanding that someone who's not 100% themselves, or someone who's entrusted you in their wellness, who's really hoping that you'll be thinking about them and thinking about how to optimize their function and help them live their best lives. Uh, they want to know that you're paying attention, right? And so being present with them, they can feel that, and then really incorporating them into the life. The whole business is about caring for them. It's a brand that is successful, I think, because it's authentic, and it's from understanding what that's like. Whether you go home with an illness or whether you take somebody home with an illness, it's it's it has its own experience.
Your direct experience on the personal front fueled your, it sounds like what you're saying is your direct experience with having your son and go through that illness and caring for him and while simultaneously becoming a doctor, uh, in gave you fueled the drive for authentic connection where you're present with your patients and built meaningful relations with them, knowing what it's like on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And just realizing that, nobody is looking to the doctor to be a miracle worker. You really want the doctor to be a partner with you and to share with you authentically what they know, and to really be an advocate for you and to be thinking in your best interest, right? That's what I wanted. I finally found that in Tampa with, his name is Bruce Tatum. So Bruce Tatum is a neurologist who worked in Tampa. He's up north somewhere in Florida working, I think, in academia. But anyway, really great neurologist. And he understood that I wasn't looking for a miracle. I would have welcomed a miracle, but I didn't expect a miracle. And really, we were looking for somebody who could help us live whatever the rest of that life looked like, you know. And that's important. That you realize that what little things you can do to be there to, shoulder some of the burden, to help wade through some of the uncertainty, to, connect with resources that are going to be helpful with living an easier life, easier maintenance. My son, for instance, was incontinent. And so try to put a diaper on an 18-year-old, it's not real cool. And so we found I was constantly looking for ways to help to support his needs and maintain his dignity, right? So I actually found a product called Alpha Dry, which is like a condom catheter with a balloon and a valve on it. And so you're able to put that on. There's a little Velcro strap that goes around it. Put it in your underwear, and you're just like everybody else, right? There's no diaper, there's none of that stuff. Gives people a lot of control. Something simple like that changed our whole existence. It took us from a place that was very painful to have to clean the bed, clean him, clean sheets, clean everything every single morning, and have him wake up feeling like a failure, to a place where he didn't feel like a failure. He was dry in the morning. You just attended to, that balloon, and then you took it off and he went about his day because he was able to maintain his continence during the day, for a while anyway. So it's like something simple like that, right? Just having somebody on your team who's understanding the daily challenges, because it's that's real, right? The fact that your kid or your loved one is going to die sucks. Don't get me wrong, but there's nothing you can do, right? It's going to happen. Doesn't need you to even worry about it. Doesn't need you to think about it. But how they're going to live is a very different conversation, right? And not a lot of people know how to have that conversation. So to be able to get past the fact that somebody's going to die and to be able to say, okay, parent, I know what you're dealing with here. Everybody's focused on them going to die, and you're trying to focus on how am I going to help them live, their best life and to be their best selves. It's a lot. It's a lot. So you really do need somebody who, you can trust, who understands things at a level that may be even a little bit more helpful, and understand the medical piece of it and maybe how to get around what services might be available or who to contact, whatever. So it's really pragmatic, realistic kind of stuff. And I don't deal with a lot of people that have a lot of health issues or have, I've put myself in a practice where I'm dealing with the walking well for the most part, right? Which is a beautiful thing. And yet we still encounter challenges. And so, I'm there to help them with their challenges.
Even the walking well benefit from that approach, which is building trust, taking a pragmatic, realistic, grounded communication style and relationship style with the patients.
Yeah, I think that's true. Everybody needs authenticity. Everybody needs somebody that they really truly can feel like they can, lean on, rely on, confide in, whatever that is. It's important. So it's probably the most important thing.
That's a segue into a conversation you and I have had many times over the years about word of mouth and referrals, and how you've shared, as you've worked to uh, learn marketing, to master marketing and sales, and um, complementary means by which you can share with prospective clients the impact that the clinic can have on their life and the services that you can have on their life. The primary means by which you've grown your medical business over the years has been through relationships that are authentic, and with the trust that you have for them, because word of mouth
Yeah,
referrals has been the fuel for that.
it's true. It's true. I have tried and failed many years in a row to do marketing, right? The good news is we really take great care of people, and they share us with the people that they love. And so the practice grew 20% year over year without any marketing success. So that, um, and that's gratifying. It's wonderful. The, the challenge is it's hard to grow beyond that, right? When you become the trusted advisor, it's hard for people to see somebody else as your equal, right? They want to just hold on to you. I've been successful in creating a team that people trust, and that's been a huge benefit because, we all grow when we collaborate together, but we also share responsibility and, you have a team rather than just one person. And so it's, it, it's, I think, super powerful when you have a team of trusted advisors, right? When everybody you come in contact with at Doctor Studio is somebody you trust, that's a huge advantage. That's an incredible service to have on your side. And so, it's been really important to me to grow a practice that provides that service across the board, even if it's, not me. I only have so many hours in a day. Turns out it's not hard to find people who really care, especially practitioners, who really care, who really want to help, who went into the business to be at service. Um, but it's that all comes from, I think, my experience with Liam and what it is I found most helpful while we were on that journey, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay, good.
Thank you for sharing, Beth.
Hmm.
To the point of bringing in other team members that share the values and how those values, there's many practitioners who got into the business, who got into the medical field to serve, to make positive impacts, to be present and a trusted partner in their patient's health journey. It sounds like the core values you developed over the years from personal and professional experiences created the environment that would help those natural tendencies in team members flourish. If someone already had some of that in their heart, in their mind, coming into that Doctor Studio environment is where it can really flourish and come to life and grow.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's been important to us to create a culture like that. Again, it's a safe place. That's really what you feel when you come into our environment and you are interacting with the team. You just feel like, yeah, this is a real place. They really care. They're going to do the best they can. They're not magicians by any means, but they're going to really be honest with me. They're going to help me out. They're going to take my money, right? It's an exchange of value. So they're here to deliver a service. And I like that relationship. I really do. It's there's a trust, there's an exchange, there's a professionalism, there's a level of intimacy, if you will, for sure. But there's some real clear boundaries, and it's great. You really get to be close with your patients and still be able to maintain and have it be professional, you know. And so that to me is that's the value, I think, of what it is that we've created.
Beth, help span the gap from where you were at the point in Tampa of getting into the Anti-Aging and Aesthetics Institute, A3, and starting your own practice, taking the approach of being the trusted advisor, having that world-class service approach from the beginning, and over the years, how that connected to where you're at now. In Doctor Studio, we're getting closer to the current state, and I'm just wondering, what was that journey like from Tampa till now?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting, actually. So, the EA3 Institute was my first practice. Um, we we were 900 square feet in a bungalow in South Tampa, and we were attracting all kinds of interesting people. Um, we had a great clientele that supported us, and it was incredible. Really, we just did some advertising. I I had this image where I wore really cool shirts and jeans to work every day, right? Kind of very relaxed, casual, but yet professional. And we attracted a really nice crowd. I joined the luxury, what was it called? I think it was called the Luxury Bureau in Tampa. And it was a group of businesses that would get together and talk about this niche, right? And what this clientele really wanted and how to help each other deliver a higher value service and how to price that service and, how to position yourself. And that was really incredibly impactful. My business partner at the time, her name was Barbie. She was very good at networking, and she would find these different resources. We'd get on television, and I was really bad on camera at the beginning. I'm very good on camera now. I can nail things pretty easily. I don't get too nervous. I am who I am. I mean, not a Hollywood star, that's for sure, but I can get it done. But it was funny because it was challenging back then and being very shy on camera, just kind of building the practice that way where it was crazy. I remember one evening I would be dragged to these different things. So one evening I was at, I think it was Hyde Park in Tampa, Florida, where all the kids would go to the clubs and stuff, right? So I'm there with my team and we're handing out these Botox coupons and stuff to this crowd. And I had this one kid, he's there with his girlfriend, and he says to me, "Shame on you promoting Botox to these 20 somethings." And I looked him right in the eye and I said, "You know what? You're right. This is ridiculous. Thank you." And I said to my team, "Get the hell out of here." It just felt so crazy, right? That you had to find that place where you're promoting your services and you're positioning yourself to being found by somebody who wants your services, right? And so that was probably the toughest lesson that I had to learn. That whole, again, it's that marketing piece of it. Um, you can show up as your authentic self, but you still have to be noticed by people. You still have to attract people to that, right? And so how do you do that is very challenging. So a lot of starting with my small practice and having it profitable right from the very beginning and really grow organically right from the very beginning and learning this whole process. The hardest thing has always been attracting people, attracting the right and perfect people to your practice. That's always the hardest thing. And it doesn't matter the value of your service. You still have to be able to attract people to your services. It's a big challenge, especially when you're in this healthcare niche, right? Because people expect that healthcare will be paid for by their insurance, and there's a lot of distrust even with healthcare professionals.
There's a point you touched on in that lesson learned under the learning how to attract, learning how to represent yourself and also learning how to connect with the right customer segment or audience. And that lesson you learned was you're promoting a specific service, being authentic, showing up, but the audience, the place that you were going to wasn't the right fit. So that I think a lot of times there's a thought process in entrepreneurs that they just have to get the offer right. They just have to get their marketing materials right or what they're doing. They have to represent right. But there's a second piece to that you're talking about, which is you got to have the right customer segment or
Land.
avatar dialed in.
That's right. It's got to land in the right place in order to
Right.
be attracted by people. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to it, And then when you do attract them, you have to know what to do with them, how to
Right.
engage them, how to get them to go to, the next level, how to move in the direction of their stated goals. And then you have to keep them engaged and service them all along the way. It's not easy. It's very hard. Oh, and then by the way, you have to be an expert at, you know,
The thing
selling
that you're
the thing
selling.
you attracted them to. That's right.
Right.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Staggering complexity. the Beth, how did that season of your life where you're building a practice, you're building uh, camera presence and some initial advertising skills and networking skills and just going through some trial and error, but also kind of landing in a groove of who you are as a business owner, as a medical professional, and carving out that reputation and that identity as a business. How did that Tampa chapter of your story set the stage for what happened next?
Yeah. Well, um, as I said, I built a very nice practice in Tampa and really became quite close to my clients. My son then passed away, and I decided to just close the practice in Tampa, to shut things down and redefine who I am and what it is that I do. Um, I had been caught up in the financial whirlwind, if you will, of that 2008 crash. And so I had bought everything at the height of the market. I had bought my building at the height of the market. I had bought all my equipment at the height of the market. And then, of course, when the stock market crashed and things took a turn, it became very, very challenging. I had a partner who was not very responsible. And so, therefore, I found myself in a place where my son was dying. I was financially very challenged and had worked the last year trying to make good on all of those obligations. Um, I'm having my home foreclosed on, having my truck, you know, uh, the whatever they do, impounded. It was like everything you could possibly imagine was coming at me at that same exact time. And yeah, it was very interesting to be sitting in this place where you say, well, your worst nightmare is to lose your child. Your second worst nightmare is to financially implode. And here they were happening at exactly the same time, right? So it was it was really a crazy time where I used to say, huh, I wonder if they come in your house in the middle of the night and drag you out of your bed, and maybe if that's how they foreclose on your house, or you don't even know. I never had any training on how all that happened, right? Because you paid your bills. That was just what you did. So to be in this situation where it was like, huh, what this is kind of like a little science experience. I wonder what experiment rather. I wonder what happens when you don't pay your bills, right? Huh. Oh, you better put your truck behind something so they can't come and get it and sort of barricade it in, because they will come for that. But as far as the house is concerned, they don't come in the middle of the night. You get this whole education about all kinds of different aspects of life.
Bringing like Soviet Russia or communist China images to mind. That's terrifying.
Yeah,
But happy they don't do that here.
no, they don't do that. I can attest to that.
Jeez.
Right? Push the limit.
Beth, that is intense. That was an
Yeah,
intense moment of time in your life.
it was intense. Yeah, it's crazy. It's sort of like basic training, right?
Yeah.
You have your ass handed to you, and you figure out how to find your way through, and then you are able at least to manage whatever comes to you. Whether it's never fun, but you just it's important, I think, to go through those times of adversity. And again, it makes you very human, makes you really understand how quickly things can happen. Um, it can happen to anybody. It's humbling, I think, to have been challenged on so many different levels.
Earlier, when you were sharing the adversity you went through initially going through medical training and learning about your son's illness and start going through that, you shared some of the how, and that was discipline. presence, the discipline to be present. A similar question now, but perhaps from a different angle, which is, what did you hold on to during that time to help get you through?
I held on to the fact that I am Liam's mother, right? That I actually grew this kid inside my body, and that um, it was my responsibility, my pleasure to walk through life with him, regardless of what it was that challenged us. And, really was my pleasure. It was very challenging. It was very difficult. It was very, emotionally exhausting, everything. But, he taught me so much. And to be able to see someone through that experience in their life is, it's amazing. I mean, I was there when he came in. I was there in the middle, and I was there at the end, and I'm still here, you know. And so I don't know if that answered your question or not, but um, that's what came to mind.
Thanks for sharing, Beth.
Yeah.
Over this conversation, we've kind of wove in between your personal and your professional experience and how they reinforced one another, and how you grew in both domains, uh, overcoming adversity on the business side, on the professional side, not just learning how to be a specialist at solving the problems, but also learning how to connect with clients and grow a business. And I wonder if and you even brought us up to the point where you are now, and Dr. Studio is fostering a culture that's based on the core values of being the trusted partner in your patient's health journey and showing up with presence. And I wonder if we're at a place of planting a flag
Yeah.
for the conversation to potentially pick back up in our next one, to define more of where the business is today and where it's going.
Yeah, I
And
would love that. I would love that. I'm excited about where the business is today and where it's going. So that'd be cool.
what haven't we connected on that you think we should before we wrap the conversation, the origin story discussion?
I think we hit a lot of the high points. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that I don't think we missed anything.
It was a pleasure connecting with you on all of this, Beth. Thank you for joining me and for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for having an interest.
You got it. We'll pick it up in the next one.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.